Good afternoon, Hillcrest family. Mark Johnson coming to you from the North End putting green here on a beautiful sunny afternoon. Thanks for letting us come into your home and show you a few things about the golf game. Hope it's been helpful so far. This is part 6. We've kind of moved into the short game this week. We did full swing last week, and now we're in short game. Brett did putting yesterday. Today I'm going to start off with some chipping fundamentals. Hopefully you'll find it very, very helpful to your game. So what I'm going to show you is a very widely used chipping technique on the tour. It was taught to me by a master professional by the name of Dr. Gary Weirin. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him before. He helped write the PGA teaching manual. He also helps in writing the rule books. Very, very knowledgeable. So this is really good stuff. I hope you find it very, very helpful. So I think it's important to understand right off the bat what a chip really is. What's the difference between a chip and a pitch? So a chip is going to be a low flighted golf shot that has some run to it that we allow the ball to release to the hole. A pitch, on the other hand, is going to be a higher flighted shot having some backspin and getting the ball to stop a little bit once we hit the green. So a chip, again, low flighted shot, has some overspin. Our goal here is to really control how much run the ball has in it, and then of course our direction as well. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into the technique of the chip. Number one, what club do we use? I can tell you that most touring professionals, when they're chipping, they find one club that they really, really like and have some good comfort level with, and they stick with it. Same thing with me. I use my trusty 58-degree wedge. 56-degree wedge would be just fine. If you're more comfortable with a 60-degree wedge, that would be fine as well. When we get into some lower lofted clubs like a gap wedge, this is a gap wedge, or a pitching wedge, or a lot of people even try to use 7 irons and 8 irons in a chipping routine. Whatever you're comfortable with, I would say be fine. The only thing I would recommend is if on a short range chip, if you're using a lower lofted club, that ball is going to have a lot more run to it, and it's going to be harder to control. So I would say just right off the bat, choose a club that you're comfortable with, but choose a club that is adequate for the length of the shot that you're trying to create. Hope that makes sense to you all. So I'm going to start with my 58-degree wedge. Again, this is the wedge that I am most comfortable with all the time. Even on long range chips, I use this wedge. I'm more comfortable with this than a 7 iron, I guess I would say, or even a gap wedge, but again, it's your choice. So we're going to start with the grip. So remember a couple of weeks ago or a week and a half ago, I talked about all the 3 different variations of the grip. So whatever grip you choose, whether it's going to be your baseball style grip, your interlock grip, or the overlap grip, it does not matter. There's not one that's better than the other. But again, what's important is going to be, and we've touched on this in probably every live video we've done, and what's going to be important here is going to be the tension in your hands. And again, we want that primarily in the last 3 fingers of your left hand. So that's going to be the most important part with whatever grip that you choose. Okay, so let's talk about the actual fundamentals with the chipping shot. What we need to do right off the bat is understand that there's a very important thing at play here in this chipping routine, and that is called shaft lean. So if I just hold the club straight up and down like this, the shaft of the club is exceedingly vertical. As I move it forward, the shaft is now leaning. So this is what we refer to as shaft lean. This position of the shaft throughout the entire motion of the chipping stroke is going to be vital to you creating a quality shot. So if you kind of look closely at the face of the wedge, so if I have the shaft vertical, there is X amount of loft on that wedge. The more I lean that shaft forward, the more I've de-lofted the club. So remember, I started out by saying a chip is a lower flighted shot. We want to create a little bit less loft so that we can get that lower flighted chip shot going. It'll create some overspin for us and really give us the shot result that we're after. So stand back here a little bit so you can see. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to place the ball in the back of our stance. So if I draw a line from my right heel to the golf ball, that's where I want the positioning of the golf ball to be in regards to my stance. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to allow the club to line up to my target line. Now, our target line may not be the end result we're going for, depending on how much undulation or break we're reading into the green. So if the shot I have is to a hole that's down over here, but the green is sloping that way, I'm going to aim a little bit more right to account for that slope. So again, I'm going to line up that club face in the direction of my target line, not necessarily the hole, okay? Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to allow that shaft to lean forward, and the butt end of the club is now going to aim into my left hip. Okay, this is pretty critical. Remember, we want to keep that shaft lean going throughout the entire motion of the stroke. So back in my stance, I apply my grip. My butt end of the club is aimed towards my left hip. Now, I'm ready to try to create a stroke. Okay, so when I stroke the club, my main goal is to keep my hands in a forward position from the head of the club itself. So if my hands were even with the club, it would look like this. I want my hands in a forward position from the club head. As I continue with my stroke, I never want my hands to do this. That's break or flip up. It's probably the most common mistake that we see on the lesson tee each and every day with chipping. Most amateurs, even some professionals, try to allow their hands to flip. When you do that, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, you could hit a heavy shot. Number two, you're most likely going to hit a very, very skinny shot. Then by chance, if you catch the ball somewhere near the club face, you're going to shoot that ball straight up in the air. So you're going to create loft by breaking your hands, which again goes against the premise of the chip. Premise of the chip is going to be a low flighted running shot. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Back in my stance, I've created shaft lean. My hands are forward from the club head. So now how do we actually move the stroke if we're not using our hands? We're going to utilize our shoulders. This is going to be the main catalyst for the golf swing. So when I turn my shoulders, they go back and they go through. But now look at my hands. They haven't broke at all. And in fact, the head of the club is now aiming towards the ground. Probably one of the most critical things that we see on the lesson tee in chipping, when people finish their chip, their club head is up in the air. If your club head is up in the air, what have your hands done? Well, they've broken, okay? So we got to make sure those hands stay locked in cement as we turn our body through the shot. So a lot of people refer to this shot as a chip putt because it kind of resembles a putting stroke. You're using your shoulders, you're using your large scale muscle groups to allow the club to just move through the hitting zone. We're not trying to manipulate this club face in any way, shape, or form. We're setting ourselves up for success. Then all we're doing is just moving the club through with our shoulders, okay? A couple other things I want to go over before I hit a shot for you and see if we can have some fun. Number one, I like to stand slightly closer to the golf ball than I normally would in the golf stroke. And the reason for that is most people, when they hit chip shots, their basic miss, I think in most amateur golf, is going to be a chunk or I take too much turf. If I stand slightly closer to that golf ball, I'm eliminating the risk of too much turf or a chunk, okay? The other reason that people hit chunks is probably the number one most reason out there is, again, the flipping of the hands through the impact position, okay? So, again, I stand just a little bit closer to the golf ball, get myself in a good setup position, and then the stroke simply shoulders back and through. left hands completely locked. Never do they flip up. So let's talk about the shoulders real quick. Another problem that you can face in trying to hit a quality chip, even if your hands are locked and you've created shaft lean, if I stop the motion of my shoulders right here, then I've decelerated. If I decelerate, there's only one way to pick up that pace again. That's to use my hands, okay? So I got really, three main goals here that we've talked about so far. Good proper setup, creating shaft lean, utilizing my shoulders, okay? So I want to keep this right shoulder moving, not just to the ball, but through the ball. Okay, that's critical here. If we stop our shoulder at the golf ball, we've decelerated, and now our hands are going to take over. We're going to let this right shoulder work through the golf ball, okay? The other thing that I want to cover briefly, pace of the entire shot is very critical. If we swing hard, guess what's going to play again? That's going to be our hands. This golf shot is an attempt in every way, shape, and form to take our hands out of it. So if we swing fast, our hands are involved. So this is going to be a very methodical, slow-moving shot, just like a putt, okay? A putt is putting stroke. If you listened to Brett yesterday, tempo is critical, just back and through, allowing your shoulders to take over. Same thing here. So I'm going to move over here to the grass a little bit where we would normally hit a chip shot. And again, I'm going to, first and foremost, I think this is a key for a lot of amateur golfers who set themselves up incorrectly. The first thing I do is I align my club face to my target line. Then I set my feet. Most amateurs we encounter, they do it opposite. They go feet first and then club face. If you do it that way, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be misaligned. So again, before I set my feet, club face at the target. Then I set up with the ball positioned towards the back of my stance. In my attempt to get the butt end of the club aiming towards my left hip, I've now created shaft lean. Remember that from the beginning, shaft lean. And then the last thing, and this is a double check measure, my hands should be physically forward of the head of the club. So if all three of those things are good, we're now in a good solid position to hit a chip shot. So now I have my setup correct. Now I can move on to my swing thoughts. What are my swing thoughts? Well, to be very, very patient, okay? The second swing thought is to utilize my shoulders. Remember, my right shoulder needs to be the one that gets through the impact position. And thirdly, just like any shot we attempt in golf, I got to keep my eye on the golf ball, okay? That's critical in every shot in golf. So it's not so much just keeping your eye on the golf ball, but it's about not allowing your head to move in a lateral motion forward. So in other words, I could keep my eye on the golf ball, but I've moved my head forward laterally, and that still doesn't work. So the idea is to keep my head still and over that golf ball throughout the motion of this chip. All right, so let's see if I can do this. So I get myself set up correctly. I create shaft lean. Now it's all about my shoulders and pace. Back, through, back, through. I keep my head still, and I allow the club to just simply do the work for me. Now, as I finished, you can see where my hands are. They're still in a position that's forward of the club head, and the toe of the club is aiming down to the ground. If you ever finish up here, you'll generally see the ball either higher in the air, or you've chunked it, or you've hit it skinny. So that's a big finish position to look for. Hands are still ahead, club head down on the ground. Okay, so what if someone says, well, that's great for hitting a normal chip shot, but what if the green is sloping away from me? What if, if if I hit that low flighted shot, what if I'm going to have a really, really hard time controlling the pace of this golf ball? You can use the exact same technique. However, we're just going to alter the ball position, and that will alter the loft in the golf club and create a different shot type for us. So going back, first one we talked about, ball back in our stance. We've created some good shaft lean with our hands forward. This is your normal basic chip shot for mostly flat level lies. What if we did the exact same setup, but now had the golf ball right in the middle of our stance? So now I've corrected that shaft lean a little bit. That shaft is now more vertical. And as a result, the loft in the club went from here to here. So I can use the exact same chipping technique, change my ball position, and then change the loft that I get with the shot. Now, any of you who have played golf long enough understand the more loft we put on the golf ball, the more backspin there is. So this is going to give us more stopping power when that golf ball hits the green. So same setup. Now there's less shaft lean. My hands now are basically in an even position with the head of my club. And as I swing through, again, right shoulder is still going to control, but my hands, again, never do this. I'm going to allow those hands to be locked. I'm going to create good tempo. And we're basically going to let the loft of the club do the work for me. So that shot now had a little bit more loft to it, had a little bit more backspin, and a little bit more stopping power. What if we had the slope of the green aiming downward, yet the shot wasn't a very long shot? We could create the exact same technique, now play the ball forward in our stance, and again, we're now adding more loft to that golf club. So same technique, 3 different ball positions, gives you 3 totally different golf shots and results on the green. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about different clubs that people like to use. I think it's important to understand the characteristics of your lie before you choose other golf clubs. The area between my golf ball and the green here, this is called the transition area. Whatever club I choose, I need to make sure that I carry the golf ball over this transition area. Reason for that is, I don't know if you can see on video, but in the grass, there's different types of grasses. There's different lengths of grasses. There's depressions, there's hills. Any one of these different items in the turf will alter the golf ball's reaction when it hits the ground. So I want to eliminate that from the shot itself. I want to control where the golf ball is going. I want to have control. I don't want the ground to have control. So when you're choosing another golf club, remember, you've got to carry this transition area. So if let's say I'm choosing a 7-iron to hit this shot, now I have a club with a lot less loft. So to carry that transition area, I've got to hit the golf ball harder. So now when I hit the golf ball harder with less loft, when it gets the green, it's got a massive amount of overspin, and it's going to take off pretty hard. So if I'm in an area where I'm going to hit a 7-iron, I want to make sure that I have a tremendous amount of green to work with so that I don't have to take such a huge golf swing. So if I were to use this gap wedge, again, I'm going to do this exact same technique. Get my club head set first, get myself in a good position, shaft lean, hands forward. And again, I'm just going to allow my shoulders to do the work for me. Good pace back and through. The shot result was lower than the other club I was using because there's more loft on the club head itself, but the rollout factor is a lot more as well, okay? And again, that's because there's less loft on the vehicle that I'm using. All right, so last thing I want to cover, bad lies. So my golf ball is sitting in a depression versus if a golf ball is sitting up nice and pretty on a tuft of grass. The chances of me getting a club head underneath my golf ball when it's sitting in a depression are very, very, very slim. When it's sitting up on a tuft of grass, no problem. Okay, so if my lie is this, where it's sitting on a tuft of grass, and I basically have any shot shape that I want, I can hit. So I can play it back in my stance, in the middle, I can play it forward. It doesn't matter. The club's going to easily get underneath that golf ball because it's sitting up. Conversely, if the club is or a ball is in a depression or even a divot, I have no chance to get the head of the club underneath the golf ball. So now I'm limited with what shot I can actually hit. I can't play it way forward in my stance because I can't get the club underneath it. I can't play it in the middle. Again, I can't get the club underneath it. But I can play it in the back because when you play the golf ball in the back of your stance, the head of the club is going to strike the golf ball first. Doesn't really matter what the lie is. If that head of the club hits the golf ball first, the golf ball is coming out of there. How many times we watch golf on TV and the player has a really bad lie around the green and the announcer says, "Oh boy, you folks at home, you wait and see. I don't think this player has any chance to get this golf ball out of this lie." And then what does he do? Hits a great shot to about 5 feet. And everyone's like, "Wow, that was so great." The reality is the golf club did the work for him. Yeah, it was a difficult lie, difficult shot, but the golf club did the work for it. Remember, golf club companies spend billions of dollars to create a product that's going to do the work for you. All you have to do is hold on and move your body correctly, and this club will take care of any lie that you have. You just got to go about it the right way. I think that's all I have for you today. I hope this was super helpful for everyone. Again, if you have any questions about any video we've done or anything that I've covered today, please email or call us in the golf shop. We're here to help you. I hope this helped you a lot. Make your chipping good. Have an awesome day.